Hello and welcome to Friday's Granada Reports, live with the latest across the northwest.
Hello there. On the programme this evening,
success for thousands appealing against their disability benefit cuts, but many are dying without the money they deserve. Charities say the system is broken.
we'll have the latest as queues at petrol stations across the region continue to grow amid fears of a fuel crisis.
Sir Keir Starmer promises North West voters a rebuilt Labour Party on the eve of the party's conference.
Mount Recycle More, the sculpture that's inspiring more of us to recycle our e-waste.
And we've had to contend with a lot of cloud coming in from the west today, some rain in the Pennines too. What are the prospects for the weekend? I'll have the forecast later in the programme.
Yes, thanks for your company. First tonight, the calls from our region for disabled people to get and keep the benefits they're entitled to.
New research says 7 out of 10 people who appealed against a government decision to deny them disability benefits were successful.
Most hearings are centred on personal independence payments, but figures released under the Freedom of Information Act reveal more than 1,000 people have died while formally challenging their benefits award.
Campaigners say it's heartbreaking. There are people who never see a resolution.
Our correspondent Andy Bonner reports on a charity's fights for justice.
Julie's had arthritis and other health problems for years. She had claimed disability living allowance, but when she applied for the new personal independence payment, or PIP, she was turned down. Assessors scored her 0.
Sometimes I can't get out of bed for weeks. I might look well, but I'm on medicine for help the pain.
Julie spent 2 years trying to fight the decision. She says the Department for Work and Pensions lost her paperwork and medical records. And it was only when she sought help that she won her appeal.
It just got to the stage where you'd lost all the evidence. Who else helped you? After 2 years, why would they put you through that? And then just because somebody else, can get that information quicker, they succeed. The papers were there, the evidence was there. They got in 2 weeks. They phoned me, said, "Julie, everything's coming back to you."
Good afternoon, bye-bye.
It was Bury-based Fight Back for Justice who came to Julie's rescue. They help hundreds like her. And as new figures show, 7 in 10 appeals nationally were successful. One of Fight Back's founders told me their success rate is even higher.
To me, that says the system isn't working, and I've been saying this for the last 7 years, that it doesn't work. Unless you know what you're doing, unless you're highly articulate in the legal side, or you know the benefit system very well, then you wouldn't understand much of what they need for a successful PIP claim.
The DWP couldn't provide anyone for interview, but in a statement they said, "We support millions of people a year, and our priority is they get the support to which they are entitled as quickly as possible. The vast majority of PIP cases are not appealed, and we continue to improve the service offered to customers, including through recent changes to our decision-making process." But Fightback says assessors still don't always see the full picture.
There are more and more mistakes being made, and it's getting more and more frustrating for people to get through to DWP to find out why the money's stopped, or ask for extensions, or even ask for documents, relating to their appeal. It's stacked against them constantly. There's just obstacles all the way.
At Fightback, they ring a bell every time they win an appeal. They say the sound will cease only when there's no more need for people to go to court. Andy Bonner, ITV News, Bury.
This evening's other news now, and long queues are continuing to form at petrol stations across the region, despite the government calling on people not to panic buy.
Yes, BP, Tesco and Esso have all closed some forecourts. It's down to a shortage of tanker drivers, which means fuel can't be delivered. These were the scenes in Davenham near Northwich.
I think people are just overreacting. It's like last year when we had all the shortages for toilet roll and things like that. It's just people just get panicked.
I'm about a quarter full, but I live about 50 miles away, so yeah. I don't want to be stuck here because I've got work. Yeah.
We're trying to get to Blackpool today to go to a gig, and we've been to every petrol station in the area, and it's either cordoned off with no diesel or there's queues like this.
Well, let's show you these scenes from one filling station in Hume in Manchester, where there's been queues right through the day.
The government have now said they could call on the military to make up for the lack of available HGV drivers. Of course, there'll be much more on this developing story on the ITV News that follows this programme. A man has denied trying to murder 2 women in an alleged knife attack at a Marks & Spencer store in Burnley. 2 women were stabbed at the store in Burnley last December. 57-year-old Manawa Hussein entered not guilty pleas to the attempted murders of Samantha Worthington and Janet Dell. He'll go on trial in January.
Bolton Wanderers say they'll no longer offer any betting provision to fans at their stadium. The club also say they won't make any sponsorship deals with gambling firms. Instead, they'll support charities and organisations that provide help for those suffering from betting addiction.
A father from Cheshire who's been searching for a stem cell donor is taking part in a daring wing walk this weekend to raise more awareness of his condition. Peter McLeave was diagnosed with myeloma, a rare blood cancer, 4 years ago, and is now in a race against time to find the donor that could save his life. On Saturday, he'll take to the skies to mark Blood Cancer Awareness Month.
And you can hear more about Peter's story on our podcast. It's called From the North, and you can find it on our website, on YouTube, and in all the places you usually get your podcasts.
Now, here's what's still to come on the ITV News at 6:30 with Charlene.
We'll bring you the very latest on the escalating petrol supply crisis for the government. There have been long queues at some stations as drivers top up, leading to shortages at some forecourts. The vigil for Sabina Nessa, the young teacher killed a week ago, and the police investigation. And what happened when the Duchess met the Queen of Tennis? Join us for these stories and more from 6:30.
Intriguing. Well, next, and ahead of a week that could be his last chance to unify a divided party, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has said he'll set out in primary colours how he plans to improve the lives of millions of people in our region.
This year's Labour Party conference begins tomorrow and comes after Sir Keir spent the summer touring the country speaking to voters, first going to Blackpool.
Labour finds itself behind the Conservatives in the polls despite relentless criticism of the government's handling of the pandemic. And this week, Sir Keir published a 12,000-word essay laying out what he stands for based on his conversations.
He's been speaking to our political correspondent, Leisha McNally.
Sir Keir Starmer, in your essay published this week, you wrote, "The UK has already suffered the worst death toll and the worst economic hit of any major European country. So why is it you still behind in the polls?"
Politics hasn't been normal in the last 18 months. We've just been through a COVID catastrophe. And in a sense, that is about the hundreds of thousands of families that have been affected by this materially because they've lost a mum, dad, sister, brother.
Shouldn't Labour be 20 points ahead by now?
Look across Europe, look across the world, and what you see is incumbent governments doing reasonably well during the pandemic in the terms of the public support. And there's a reason for that. If you're in a pandemic, most people want the government to succeed. That's not peculiar to Boris Johnson. What happens now is that hopefully, we're through the worst of that pandemic, and that gives me and the Labour Party the opportunity to make the arguments about what happens next as we come out of the pandemic.
We'll get to that in a minute, but you can't just blame the pandemic, can you? Because you were neck and neck last November and you lost it. So why do families in the North West not feel that they can vote for Labour?
What matters is what happens at the next general election, and I've been rebuilding my party and now about to make the arguments about the future. We've got a very optimistic future look at our conference next week, focusing on education, work, health, security is absolutely what I'll be setting out next week.
The Mayor for Greater Manchester, Annie Burnham, has said that the party's been too timid in the past. What's the most exciting thing that you do to change the lives of families in the North West?
This will be the big opportunity to set out in primary colours what the future looks like. It's very forward-looking, it's full of optimism. I'm from a working family. I'm going to be talking about the things that matter to working families. How do you get a first-class education for your child? What do you do about the attainment gap? It's not a philosophy or an ideology. It's a practical matter which people around their kitchen table are talking about right now. What is the next generation of jobs? Why do young people feel they've got to leave places, particularly in the northwest, in order to get a job?
You said that you wanted Metro mayors like Andy Burnham to be seen as the front line of the Labour Party.
Yeah.
You're not giving them much time at party conference, are you? They've got a few minutes which they're sharing with other Metro mayors. Is that the right approach?
Well, we happily have a lot of mayors. I'm really pleased about this. I want to showcase the different mayors we have in different parts of the country. Andy's doing a fantastic job, and I want him speaking at conference. I want Tracy speaking at conference and Sadiq Khan speaking at conference. We want to showcase them, and that's what we'll be doing.
Sir Keir Starmer, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we're staying with politics because next tonight there's a record-breaking election in the Isle of Man.
Yes, 10 women were elected to the House of Keys, more than ever before, after voters went to the polls across the island on Thursday.
Our Isle of Man reporter Joshua Stokes followed the counts through the night.
They voted in their thousands, and the results broke records as the Isle of Man decided which 24 new people will represent them in the House of Keys. And part of that history are the first 2 women to ever be elected in the same constituency.
Yes, of course, it's amazing to be part of history, but to be here because of what we stand for is what counts.
The percentage turnout was one of the highest it's been for Douglas South for a number of years, so I mean that was already an achievement, and let alone then getting 2 female people elected.
How does it feel as a new MHK going in at this time in particular?
I really do feel that this is one of the most important administrations that have been put together, and to be part of it, it's just the icing on the cake.
Out of the 24 MHKs, 11 of them will be new members and 13 of them will be returning to the House. A record-breaking 10 women were elected across 8 of the 12 constituencies, but it was also a night where 4 of the 8 government ministers lost their seats. Someone who managed to keep their seat, though, was the Treasury Minister.
I feel very privileged to have received it. I'm going to do my very best to help shape the island and put the people of this island at the very front of government's agenda.
Now with his eyes set on becoming the next Chief Minister.
I'm going to have a number of serious conversations with those people who've been elected today, and we will see where we go at the beginning of next week.
And those procedures will all start back in Parliament. And now the 24 new members have been elected, it'll be back here to Tynwald next week where the real work can begin, kick-starting a whole new era in Manx politics. Parliament in place, with all eyes on who will be the next leader. Joshua Stokes, ITV News, in the Isle of Man.
Yeah, many congratulations to all those elected.
Let's hope Josh is getting some sleep now.
Yeah.
Now, what does 6 million old mobile phones, a huge sculpture in Stockport and our region's Olympic and Paralympic medal winners have in common?
Well, here's a clue. It's all about recycling. Our reporter, Claire Hanna, explains.
We all know the Northwest didn't do too badly in Tokyo at all, getting more medals than any other region in the UK at the Olympics and coming second in the UK medal table at the Paralympics. But did you know all the medals handed out this year were made totally from recycled metal? The first time this has ever happened. Ahead of the Games, people across Japan took part in a 2-year project, donating thousands of tonnes of e-waste, including millions of mobile phones. That was all melted down, and the metal which was left was used to create the medals. So how does our most decorated Paralympian feel to have old mobile phones around her neck?
It is amazing to think that 6 million phones were donated to create the array of medals that were presented during the Olympic and Paralympic Games, and it could be an incredible legacy of the Games from Japan, that this is how we make our precious cargo moving forwards for trophies or medals of other kinds for other events. It's really cool.
Obviously, we can't all make medals out of old mobile phones, but there are plenty of other things you can do with them. This, behind me, Mount Recycle More, was commissioned by Music Magpie here in Stockport to show exactly what e-waste is and why we should be recycling it.
Literally, it's electronic waste, but it's anything that, as you can see, I mean, the statue itself's made out of literally all sorts. There is a lot of old consumer tech product, but there's toasters in there, there's lawnmowers, there's strimmers, there's old computers in there, etc. It's literally anything that could be lying around your house. You know, if this stuff does end up going to landfill and in the soil, there is some really horrible materials that are manufacturing these things. So there's lead, there's mercury, so there's some really nasty stuff.
A recent study shows only 20% of e-waste in the UK is currently recycled. Steve says selling it isn't the only way you can reuse it.
There's local charities here in Stockport that collect your old electronics or take it to a registered WE outfit rather than just leaving it in a drawer or putting it in the bin.
It's hoped this sculpture will help spread the message about e-waste. It's already been to the G7 summit in Cornwall. Sadly, the Prime Minister, seen here on the right, didn't get to see it, but if you want to see it, you'll need to be quick. It's off to a new location next week. Claire Hannah, ITV News, Stockport.
It's time now for a look at the latest episode of All Around Britain. Rhea Hebden and Alex Beresford have spent the day at one of the UK's most awe-inspiring stadiums.
This week on All Around Britain, we are at the home of Welsh rugby, the Principality Stadium in Cardiff.
And we're heading up on the roof to find out what makes it one of the most iconic sporting venues in the world. Don't look down.
You can't help but look down. Oh, wow. It's incredible.
Oh, wow, this is amazing. Look at this. And we'll meet Ennis, the real Millennium Falcon who patrols the skies to keep the seagulls away.
Also on the show this week,
we meet a group of strangers in Tyneside who've bonded over bees.
I found the bees just really helped me just bring myself back down to earth and just enjoy being close to nature.
we discover the magic of these ancient trees.
And we visit a horse riding academy in Gloucester that's encouraging more young people into the sport.
So we'll see you this Sunday at 11:55 on ITV.
For another trip all around Britain.
Looks like a lovely watch.
How do you bond over bees? I'm terrified of bees.
And those heights, absolutely not for me.
Exactly.
Finally tonight, to the rebirth of a much-loved swimming baths that served Birkenhead for generations.
Burn Avenue Baths opened in 1933, but closed more than 70 years later in 2009.
It was marked for demolition, but the bulldozers have been kept at bay thanks to the hard work of a local charity.
Today, the building's reopening to the public, and we sent our reporter Victoria Grimes along to find out more.
Well, I didn't expect to spend most of the day standing in a swimming pool, and it's a good job there's no water in it because I haven't brought my costume with me, obviously. But here I am in Birkenhead at the Burn Avenue Baths in Rockferry, which are reopening today. A grand reopening ceremony. They've been here for 90 years, and it's all thanks to the community here that they are having this rebirth, Jane.
It is. So the Baths is now being looked after by Burn Avenue Trust, which is a charity set up purely to rescue, restore and reopen the baths.
And you've raised £750,000 to do this. This has been such a huge community effort. Everyone's come together to make it happen.
It is. It's been absolutely brilliant. Everybody loves this building. People used to swim here. People learnt to swim. They played football. They, met their partners. Everybody you talk to who grew up on this side of Wirral will go, Burn Avenue Baths, love that building.
And now you've spearheaded this campaign. Why was it so important to you to do this?
It's a beautiful building. It's a 1930s building and it's solid as a rock. And round here there isn't that much for people to do. So it's just going to be the hub of the community. It always was, and we're just making sure that it will be in the future.
Well, you've done a fantastic job, and I know it's going to take a while before the swimming pool itself is up and running again, about 4 years or so. So we're safe now. Hopefully there won't be any water coming in while we're chatting in here. Jenny, over to you. Now, we saw you a little bit earlier, and you were cutting the ribbon, and there's a very special reason why you were chosen to do that.
Yes, my nan and granddad were children growing up next to each other in Burn Avenue itself, and my granddad ended up being a lifeguard here, and they became childhood sweethearts, and it's a very special place to us. My sister, me and my mum all learnt to swim here.
So it's 4 generations of your family who've all learnt to swim here.
It's a super special place to us, and to see it come back to life like this is just absolutely amazing. To see so many people who care about it so much is very, very special.
Does it feel strange to be stood back in the pool?
It certainly does. I remember my sister swimming up and down, doing her first lengths, and my mum sitting in the seats upstairs with a belly on her because she was pregnant, you know, so...
Not because she'd eaten too much cake. I'm glad you said she was pregnant then. Well, girls, it's been lovely to see you. Thank you so much for showing us around and letting us come and stand in your pool to film today. But I think we should probably think about getting out before somebody puts the taps on.
Well done to everyone involved in that campaign. Now, if you saw the Ghostbusters' famous Ectomobile or Dumb and Dumber's Mutts Cuts van on the streets of Chorley today, I think that's the right pronunciation, then we're happy to confirm that you weren't dreaming.
Yeah, this was all part of the great big Northwest tour, a banger rally that's hoping to raise thousands for the children and staff at Darien House Children's Hospice.
14 teams set off this morning, heading to Carlisle before returning back to Lancashire tomorrow. The cars will then be auctioned to raise even more cash. Good luck to everyone taking part.
Now for the weather, here's John.
Now that is brew weather.
And only boiling what she needs.
United Utilities sponsors ITV Granada weather.
Big up you, sis.
Hello again. Well, we've had to put up with quite a lot of cloud today. It was certainly a bit of a dull day over Darwin. The sunflower there trying its very best to brighten things up. But things did brighten up. A bright interval here this morning over Rochdale, for instance. And Newton Willows early this afternoon, the cloud did thin out to allow a little bit of sunshine to come through. And in the short term, over the weekend, the weather is relatively mild, some decent temperatures, but next week there's a change taking place. The air starts to come more from an Arctic sort of point, and that means it is going to feel colder and very much more unsettled into next week. But before we get there, through this evening, we've still got a lot of cloud feeding in there from the Irish Sea, bringing 1 or 2 outbreaks of light rain or drizzle, mainly but not exclusively over the Pennines, and low temperatures probably down towards Cheshire and Derbyshire at 12 Celsius. Now, here's a lovely sunset recently over New Brighton. Tomorrow the sun's up just after 7 o'clock and setting tomorrow evening just after 7 o'clock. So again tomorrow morning, a cloudy start, some outbreaks of rain and drizzle over the Pennines, but things will brighten up tomorrow afternoon from the south. We'll see a little bit of sunshine coming through, and most places away from the Pennines should stay dry. Some nice afternoon sunshine in the Isle of Man, and a top temperature in the brighter spots over Cheshire, 21, 22 Celsius, and little change really through tomorrow evening. Sunday doesn't look a bad day, a fair amount of sunshine around. You can see that frontal system out there to the west, so that is going to move in on Sunday night, introducing that fresher weather for next week. Enjoy your weekend.
United Utilities sponsors ITV Granada weather.
2 sugars, please.
Oh, lovely.
Well, that is all from us this evening.
I'll be back with the late news after news at 10. Hope you can join us for that.
For now, from all of us here, have a wonderful evening and enjoy your weekend. Bye-bye.
Night, night.